Today we are embarking on a journey, much like it happened 531 years ago in 1492, where Chrissy C, also known as Christopher Columbus, also known as Cristoforo Colombo because he was Italian, I don't know why you all refer to him with an English name, he set sail from Palos de la Frontera in Spain, ready to go and completely fuck up his entire route and mistakenly end up in the Americas. Now our journey for today is a little bit shorter. I know my videos tend to be longer than they should, but I doubt we're gonna take 3 months to talk about this. It's about, once more, I'm sorry to all of you who think this is complaining, but talking about the most unbalanced and oppressive and problematic meta of Mythic Plus in the history of this game, I think it's something warranted. I think it's something that should be done. We have gotten a couple of days ago a video, a quite sad, to be honest, video from Critcake, who is a very good warrior Mythic Plus player, who was very candidly lamenting the situation in Mythic Plus, pointing out how badly things had gotten in Mythic Plus. For those of you who might not know, this is Critcake. He is a very high-level Mythic Plus player as a warrior. He has gotten some quite high keys already in Season 2, but if you go back to Season 1, for example, you can see how much higher it was, how much more he was able to perform as a warrior, and he was lamenting the fact that, as soon as this patch launched, as soon as we got into this Exodia meta, his ability to be able to push to high keys was, hampered a lot, because now everyone wants, more of the same, more of this. We have our whole parterre here of info and data about the situation, and we want to try to have an answer for this. We have seen a lot of discussion about this and what players think should be done about this situation, because every time someone says something about this, from another corner a different opinion will come out. For example, some of you might be saying, well, this is just simple, just nerf them all and bring them down, right? And then you have someone else from a different corner saying, what about this? What about everyone who has been doing these keys? If you nerf all of these specs down, nobody will be able to do these keys anymore, which means you are killing the season. There is no more reason to even try to push high keys because you won't be able to, because these keys were only doable with the power of these specs. So if you nerf them, it's impossible to complete them. Someone goes against the logic of maths and tries to say the opposite. Simple, just buff everyone else. Right? How hard is it going to be buffing 33 different specs? That guy, generally speaking, is laughed out of the room, but it's also something that gets often said about this situation. Another one was the debate on whether or not it's a problem with dungeons, right? The reason why these specs are powerful is because the dungeons require them. Dungeons require things like Master Spell. Dungeons require things like helping the healer and helping the tank survive, something that 3 DPS specs cannot do, but 2 DPS specs and an Augmentation Evoker can do. Other players try to point out that this is a problem of healers. The reason why this meta has formed now is because healers have been so weak that now with an Augmentation Evoker, everything is made easier for the healer. Now you have a mage able to give you mass barrier, you have an Augmentation Evoker able to give 20% more healing, basically near permanent, to your healer because of Ebonmite. He also has Breath of Eons for a massive shield. You also have Priest, which can still give utility in less damage taken in the form of Master Spell. So all of these things are going to help the healer, because the healer right now is super weak. So if you nerf Augmentation Evoker, all you are doing is you are unmasking, you are revealing the fact that healers are super weak right now in Mythic Plus. So there have been a lot of questions, a lot of debates on what should be done to fix this situation. Obviously, many, myself included, are still reserving their tanks of S-class grade Hopium for Season 3, for patch 10.2. I have already given up even considering the idea that this would continue in 10.2 and something drastic will happen. Then we will have big balance tuning for 10.2 fixing this thing. I don't even want to go and entertain the idea that this will continue in Season 3, but something between now and then, which is like a 2 months gap, could be done to fix this issue, right? To sort of make this a little bit easier. We have just seen now, also the reason why we are making this video now, that in this reset we have gotten no hot fixes, no further balance tuning, no further changes. We have gotten some for PvP, some bug fixes and whatnot, but nothing for this problem. Also, another thing that might be the cause, but perhaps not, is the fact that right now we have the Great Push going on right now, right? We have gotten the start of the tournaments for the Great Push, and it will continue to go on for the following weeks. So maybe we have the thing where Blizzard doesn't really want to change the balance of Mythic Plus because this tournament is currently going on. We have the first group last week. We've gotten this second group a few days ago. Now we're going to be getting the Group C in a couple of days, and then we will get the global final. So maybe Blizzard, it doesn't want to change anything drastic right now because of this. What's going to happen once this ends? You know, that might be a thing currently happening in Blizzard's side of things. Still though, now we have gotten past the 3-week mark. We're almost going to enter our first month of 10.1.5, and effectively we can now say that nothing changed. We can now say that the nerfs, if we can call them that, the nerf given to these specs did effectively nothing to curb their power. We can also say that many players often join in when we talk about nerfing these specs and talk about the raid. Now, I am on the side of the Mythic Plus players on this one. I don't think it is at all relevant how powerful a spec is in the raid right now. Right now we have well over 500 guilds who have defeated Sarkaret. Right now the importance of meta specs in the raid is super low. You have 14 DPS slots in the raid, you have plenty of room to be bringing some less powerful specs. It's nowhere near the level of tightness of how close it is to be able to bring just 3 DPS specs in Mythic Plus. It's also the fact that, weirdly, the progression of the season becomes less and less important in the raid, while it becomes more and more important in Mythic Plus. Because the goal in the raid is to push as fast as possible to get your rewards, to get your value, to get your bragging rights for doing well in the raid, while the progression of Mythic Plus pushing is reversed. It's slow pushing at the start, which becomes progressively higher, because what matters isn't to clear high keys as fast as possible. What matters is to simply clear the highest keys you can, which means you have to wait for balance tuning, you have to wait for multiple dungeons to be nerfed multiple times, you have to wait for class and spec buffs, you have to wait for best in slot gear, you have to wait to jump 10 more item levels, 15 more item levels, get all of your best in slot trinkets and weapons and whatnot, and all of that takes time. So technically, the deeper we go into a season, the more important the balance in Mythic Plus should be compared to the one in the raid. At the start of the season, the raid should be much more important, and then in the second part of the season, Mythic Plus should be much more important. Now we are in the second part of the season, so now is where we should have seen more importance given to these problems in Mythic Plus. What about the question, though, of what to do, of what should be done? I think I heard something not that dumb, to be perfectly honest, which is something that other players might have suggested before, which is giving Mythic Plus a similar treatment to PvP, not nearly as drastic, right? Right now, Blizzard is moved on for a few years now to be balancing PvP stuff on its own, right? This thing does 60% more damage in PvP. This ability has a 5-second increased cooldown in PvP. This ability is not critting in PvP, right? It's something completely different from PvE, from the rest of the game. I think Blizzard should be introducing more mechanics and features like less or more effective while outside of a raid. I think this is going to allow Blizzard to balance Mythic Plus without having to put nearly as much importance in the raid. What is valuable is, for example, that some of the things that can become more problematic in Mythic Plus are AoE features, AoE abilities, AoE power levels of specs, which are not nearly as valuable in the raid. So you can more easily nerf them for Mythic Plus. Same goes for defensives, especially group-wide defensives and big features like those are not nearly as important in the raid because it's usually the healer's job. You have multiple healers with multiple cooldowns that can take care of that, so you can balance those differently for Mythic Plus. I think if you add this feature of allowing Blizzard to balance the raid and Mythic Plus in certain things differently without having to impact the spec in both activities, like for example, it was a correct example, even though it feels bad because it's so strong as a spec, but Shadow Priest was terrible in single target in the raid. So yeah, even though they are super S tier in Mythic Plus, it doesn't make sense to nerf their single target. It doesn't make sense to keep them weak in single target because their damage is weak on one target only. So it could make sense to, you know, significantly buff their single target and then add, you know, this particular talent for single target, this particular ability for single target is less effective outside of the raid. So now, for example, you keep their single target competitive in the raid, but you don't continue to power them up in Mythic Plus where they are already stronger. At this point, there is literally, I will be surprised if it changes, but there is literally no way for Blizzard to fix this problem. It's just talking about fixing this is just irrelevant. It's like you seeing your car windows shattered glass on the ground in 1,000 pieces and wondering which type of glue you need to buy to be able to reattach all the pieces together on your car window. It's not. You have to go and change it. You have to go and buy a new one completely. There is no solution to that. And our solution to our broken car window is called 10.2. That's the only thing that can change this situation. Before then, nothing can fix this issue. Nerfing all of these most powerful specs won't work. It's now too late. I pointed this out multiple times. Blizzard had to do it in the first week of the patch. Technically, they should have done it on the PTR, but even if they didn't do it on the PTR, they should have done it on the first week of 10.1.5. They didn't do it. Buffing the weak specs is not possible. You cannot buff 30 specs all at once. It's just not something that is feasible. Trying a last resort of nerfing all of the most powerful specs and then nerfing all of the dungeons. So specs will continue to be able to push the high keys as before, except that now they can push them, because if you only nerf the top specs, you can't push the high dungeons anymore because those dungeons were only doable by the top specs. But if you nerf the top specs and then you nerf the top dungeons, then maybe other specs are allowed to push at the same time. That's also not very feasible. It would require Blizzard to literally carpet bomb nerf every single dungeon at once on top of nerfing every single one of the powerful specs at once. Not very likely. So I don't think that, even though I said we were starting a journey on questioning what can be done to fix this issue right now, unfortunately, the answer at the moment is there is no solution. I gave Blizzard, I'm not bragging, okay, I'm not pretending to know a lot, but I gave Blizzard the answer to this, which was don't let it go live, first of all, and second, if you let it go live, stop it in the first week. It didn't happen. We are now moving in our first month of this patch, so it's now too late to do anything. The damage has been done, not much more can be done at this moment in this mid-patch to be fixed. We are also seeing for now the 10.1.7 class tuning and spec tuning that will come in a few weeks, and there is basically nothing worth of value to these specs in terms of nerfs anyways. So I don't think, unfortunately, this will change anytime soon, and it's a sad thing. We started this video talking about Crit Cake starting to have much more trouble now to find groups, and that's gonna be the same for many more players, not really trying to do 26 and 27s, but even just 20s or 18s or 22s, and unfortunately this will continue. The only saving grace, which isn't that much of a good thing, but the only positive thing is that this expansion is the fastest ever to bring up character to max level and close to max item level. You can get nowadays a character to 445 item level in something like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So it's very easy to reroll to a flavor of the month spec nowadays. Doesn't fix the problem, it's not positive at all. In fact, it's one of the major reasons why we have gotten this meta to snowball so hard, because it was so easy for so many players to reroll to these specs and basically be able to play them at max level very quickly. But at the very least you have the option, rather than being locked in your weak ass decline spec for the next 2 months. So I'm sorry to start a video and end it in such a depressing way, but this is how things are at the moment in 10.1.5. hoping that none of this will continue. As I said, I don't even want to entertain the idea, hoping that this won't continue in 10.2 and Blizzard will finally get back on track, back to the good old days of the nice even balance of Dragonflight release and 10.1. We can now leave each other on this Thursday. Thanks, of course, as usual, to all of our dear Patreon supporters for the contribution and the help, the growth of the channel. You can still, of course, support completely for free. You can like and comment down below, as well as subscribe to the channel itself. And now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow. And in the meantime, we were going so well. We were going so well in terms of balance. What happened?